Today I'm going to show you how to dial in good tones with the Mesa Mark amp series. The Mesa Mark amps are quite unique as far as the tone stack is concerned, and for those of you who don't know about these amps, the tone control, so bass, middle and treble control, are acting more or less as a boost section for the amp, at least in the gain channels. And the reason for that is they're located in the circuit that is coming before the distortion stage. So in other words, you are shaping the signal that is coming from the guitar before it hits the distortion stage of the amp. So that is a big difference, for example, to the Marshall style amps, where usually you control you do the overall tone shaping with the bass, middle and treble controls. And for that reason, it's you have to choose quite another approach to get good tones with the Mesa Mark series amps than with, for example, a Marshall amp or an Angle amp. So I opened the editor for my Fractal FM9 here, and currently I'm playing a pack that is coming with my preset pack for that unit, which offers the best high gain tones. And I created a patch with the Mark IV amp, and I would like to show you what I did and also how I approach these amps, and maybe that will help you to get the best out of your Mark style amps. So here's the patch. Turn off the enhancer block. It's that tight as the anus. And here's the amp block. So what you can see here is basically the bass, middle and treble control, which is modeled after the real amp. The first thing you will see if you go to the preamp section is that here the tone stack location is set to pre by default. And that is what I was talking about. So if you set this to post, then the bass, middle and treble control would act more or less like in another amp, like maybe a Marshall amp. If you make this, you can see with these settings, of course, it sounds more or less like shit because treble is cranked. If you set everything here to about 5, it still sounds like shit, but yeah. Usually it's way more similar to act like in a, or like you would expect it, than if it was set to pre. So let's go back to the initial state of the preset, just to make sure that everything is working properly. And here you have the EDO page, which offers a little bit other controls, like maybe the high treble control here, and also the presence and the depth. Presence and depth control, by the way, these are usually power amp controls, which are affecting the signal after the preamp stage. So I've engaged the boost, which you can access here. Currently I'm using a mid boost with 8 dB, but if I turn that off, you can hear that tone is already very maybe crunch, good for crunch rhythms. but if you need more gain, then maybe you can use the boost, at least with this amp model. And the actual tone shaping is done here with the 5-band graphic EQ, which also comes in the real amp. And they implemented that here with these frequencies, and usually what people do is they apply some kind of a V shape. And what you will also find is you have two gain controls, which are basically two gain stages you can control separately. And that is the case, I think, in all the gain channels of the Mark amps, at least of the high gain channels, the Mark II C+, or Mark IV, Mark V, Mark VII, also in the tri-axis. So let's try to dial in a good tone from scratch. Maybe let's use one amp, maybe the 2C++. And as you can see here, everything at 5. Here it kept the gain settings, boost is disengaged, and you have this output EQ flat. Sounds okay. Of course, you don't have high gain, but not too bass heavy. If we dial out the bass here, you can immediately hear that it's still usable. In fact, maybe it's more usable than before, because you don't have this flubbiness in the bass. And also, maybe if you crank the mids, it's still usable, not too honky, but more gain. If you crank the treble a little bit, and suddenly you're almost there. It might be enough gain for you. By the way, I'm playing my Harley Benton Fusion, which doesn't have that much output. Maybe with an EMG equipped guitar, you would have much more gain here. But that doesn't sound bad at all. If I would like to get more gain, of course you can fiddle around with these controls here. What I always do is usually I try to set them somehow similar, but I wouldn't go further than 3 o'clock. And you will hear immediately if you crank these. Maybe with this amp it's okay, with this amp model, but with the other amp models it might be too much. So yeah, you could try out how far you can get with these, but I got the best results by setting them similar. You can see what happens if you maybe you can also try to max this and then fiddle around with that here to fine-tune the gain structure. But of course, the tone shaping is happening here. Usually what I'm doing here is then trying to reduce these 750 Hertz, because they're usually too much when you boost the mids. And here you have to listen closely. In my ears, it could have a little bit more bass, a little bit less top end. So if you reduce the top end here, then what sometimes happens is you find it maybe a little bit too muddy. Then you can also reduce some of these lower mids. because these controls here, the three mid controls, they're more or less for the, I'd say for the character. And these controls here, the 6600 Hertz is the harshness, it's too scratchy. And this is maybe the fatness. It doesn't change the overall character, but gives it a little more, a little bigger tone. So. But the overall tone character is shaped here in these mids. So let's check out another model. To be honest, that was really easy. There are models which I had to tweak a little bit more to get good results. So I've copied now the settings to another channel here, and maybe we can check out the usual 2C Plus in comparison. As you can hear immediately, it gets really flubby. So let's reduce this. And let's reduce the bass. And what you can maybe also hear is you have way less distortion. Try to crank it, but it doesn't work with that model. The comparison here. Don't get that much distortion. And of course we have to shape the tone here. So what I did, as you see, it's basically the same, reducing the bass and boosting the mids and treble. And also I checked out how far I could go with these controls, the gain and the overdrive. But if you cannot get enough gain, then I would use the boost function. There you go. And suddenly you have enough gain. But it sounds really, really harsh. And of course you could fiddle around here with the presence and with the high treble. But also we have the bright control here. But in my opinion, this 5-band graphic EQ is tailored really well to the Mark amps, so I would recommend to use these. And as I said, maybe we can remove something of the in the mids. Start with that. Okay, same thing here. Way too harsh. Needs maybe a little bit more bass frequencies, less mids. And as you can see, you end up with a maybe drastic V shape, but with that amp model it works. So let's compare it to the other one. More bass frequencies. Okay, so what these faders are doing is basically, this is for the punch, more or less, as I would call it. There's percussiveness, which maybe some people like for riffage. It doesn't get in the way in a mix that much, but it covers a lot of or takes away a lot of the pitch of the note and adds some percussive elements, which is not always the best solution for lead tones. And this is basically the mids, which remove, well, the mids of the mids, so I would always recommend to start with that. And these are the lower mids, which can lead to boxy tones if you have too much of these, and also to muddiness. So if you have a very muddy tone, I recommend to address these 240, 250 Hertz. Okay, so let's check out another amp. Maybe we will copy this again to channel C, that we can compare it. And we have the Mark IV. And the Mark IV lead is one of my favorites, but maybe let's choose another one and see how far we can get, because I showed you the lead in the beginning. As you can see here in the rhythm section, you have only one gain control, so that is maybe a channel that is not supposed for high gain lead tones. So maybe we could check out the lead. Let's check out the lead mid. There we go. Very flubby. First step, reduce some bass frequencies. Flubbiness is gone. But we want to have more gain. Crank the mids. Working. Crank some treble. It could be a little bit too much. As you can hear, these break up. I don't know if you can hear it in the highs, but there's some clipping happening somewhere in the circuit, so I would remove a little bit of the treble frequencies. Yeah, the presence shift here, which is interesting, but I would leave it off. To be honest, I don't exactly know which are the best settings on the real amp, because I don't own the real Mark amp. I only know the principles, how to dial in tones with these amps. And so let's keep that tone. And let's do our little trick here, remove the 750. A little bit more. Might be too much. The thing is, if your sound starts to disappear, if you remove too much of the 750 Hertz, at least it disappears in the mids, then it's way too much, then you should add a little bit more of these frequencies. But if it's still too mid heavy, then I would recommend to use these controls and also these to get more of a wider V shape. Maybe here we can raise it. So if you have two drastic settings, so if the settings here between two neighbor faders are too different, then maybe that could lead to some unwanted well, spikes in the EQ curve. So I wouldn't recommend that. But to be honest, I'm not quite satisfied with the tone here. So as you can see, I'm doing this really by ear, trial and error, to figure out what is working. And I have to say, with the other amps it was quite easier. Okay, this amp is really loud here, so might be too much here. And also I'd like to add some more gain. Quite nice. Finally, let's check out one of my favorite all-time analog units, which is the Tri-Axis. So where do we have it? I think here, the USA Pre. And let's choose the Elite 2 orange, or yellow as it's called here, which is maybe very popular in the real unit. Tri-Axis has also these two gain controls here, at least in the lead 2 channels. Same thing here, remove some bass. Tri-Axis, I would also boost the mids into treble. Unfortunately, the Tri-Axis doesn't have the 5-band graphic EQ. Instead, it has some fixed V-curve style in the dynamic voice control. So I rather prefer to have these access to the 5-band graphic EQ, like here in the FM9. And yeah, let's check out some V-curve. Well, it's flubby, so we have to remove some bass here. Say I can't recognize the characteristics of the real Tri-Axis very well, because I played the real Tri-Axis a long time. It always tends to clip somewhere, but that makes the characteristic of this tone. I mean, to me it sounds really like the 90s Patricia. And if you would like to avoid that, maybe you could reduce treble. But then maybe you need more gain or a boost. Still too bass heavy, so I would dial out some bass here. Already nice, but let's boost it. by the way, if you would like to see my boost settings, they're always the same here. I'm using the mid boost. Here you can choose some boost pedals. Although I'm in the amp block, in the drive block here in the FM9 you have way more options, but here you could choose some of the maybe popular boost pedals. And I'm just using 8 dB. What you could also do here is you can tone shape your input signal way more using a parametric EQ. So if this is not enough, you can cut some bass frequencies here also in the EQ here. But now we will just stick with the usual controls. So, as I said, you have to fiddle around with many controls here just to get the right amount of gain. Because basically all these controls here, and if you're using the boost, of course, here the boost level control, they're affecting the amount of gain. And the actual tone shaping is done here, only here. And maybe to a certain degree here with the preamp, presence and the depth. Here it's preamp presence because the tri-axis has a presence control, which is a little bit weird because usually presence is known as to be a power amp control, but it's in the tri-axis it's somehow I think located after the distortion stage, so it doesn't affect the amount of gain. So yeah, you can use the presence and depth also for the tone control, but not the bass, middle and treble, and also not these things here. So that's it. I hope this helps you. Please let me know your experiences with these kind of amps, and other than that, please consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. See ya.